Some people talk about the vision. Some people talk about the team. So you can use this structure however you like. Now, I'd like to introduce an idea which I discovered recently through some academic research. So at the MIT Management School, at the Sloan School, Alexander Williams created an amazing report, a study on the art and science of pitching. So this study is really interesting because it talks about audience. And it uses the analogy of horse racing. And it says that different investors listen for different stories of, number one, the jockey. Other investors listen for stories of the horse. A different investor might be listening for stories of the course and the conditions that the jockey and the horse are competing on. And other investors focus on purely the odds and the financials. So what does this actually mean? What is this analogy really trying to tell us? So when an investor is listening for stories of the jockey, it means they're focused on who is the team that's going to create this idea. So I know an investor, and he told me that he invests in the team because the technology will change, the idea will evolve. But if the team cannot make it happen, then it's not really a viable idea for him. And he's a very successful investor. So he's listening for stories of the team. Other investors are focused on the stories of the horse. The horse story? The horse story is the product. What product are you making that is going to change the world? Is it a smartphone? Is it drones? Is it medical devices? Is it security? Is it education? Is it fintech? What product are you making? Some investors are product people. They know that a product is the way to grow. So they're mostly tuned in to how you talk about your product. A third investor might be talking about what is the course? What conditions are we racing on? What is the environment? And this investor wants to know about your market. Is it a small market that could get big? Is it a massive market that's being underserved? Is it a market that we don't even know yet? If you think about 10 years ago, the online video conferencing market was quite small, and now it's huge. So what is the market that your idea will exist in? And then the other story, the final story, is the story of the odds. What are the financials? How are you making money? How much burn rate do you have? How much do you need to take this idea from this size to this size? So some investors, the majority of investors are focused on the financials, but other investors, they listen for stories of the team, the jockey, the product, the horse, the course, the market. So for me, this is an amazing analogy because it allows you to think about what stories are you telling? How are you pitching your startup? Are you talking about the amazing team with qualifications and experience? Are you talking about the amazing product? Are you talking about the market you're going to serve? Or are you talking about your exit strategy? All of it is important, but your audience will have a preference for what builds trust in you for them. So when I listen to startup pitches, I hear a lot of founders describing what it is they do. And when I listen to investors asking questions, the investors are asking, how are you going to do it? So at the moment, a lot of pitches are out of balance because people are focusing on describing what, and they need to balance out and describe a little bit more of how. Because an investor wants to know how you will do this. They often get ideas very quickly. Yes, I see what it is. Now tell me how you're going to make it happen. So it's fair to say that a lot of investors are focused on the financials because that's their business. But they also care about the team, the product, and the market. And when you have this awareness, you can look at your ideas and your pitch and ask yourself, am I talking about my jockey? Am I talking about my course? Am I talking about my horse? Or am I talking about the odds of winning? So different investors listen for different stories. And when you know this and you're in control of your stories in your pitch, then you're much better at connecting with the right people. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to go back after this webinar and look at each slide of your pitch and ask yourself, what story am I telling? Am I talking about the jockey, the horse, the course, or the odds? What is the message that I'm sharing? And then ask yourself the third question. Can some of my stories be better suited to an investor? So I see a lot of founders pitching at events, and they will have fantastic jockey stories, fantastic horse stories, very detailed course stories, but they talk a little bit about the odds, the financials. Whereas the investor would feel more comfortable if you spoke a little bit more about the financial aspect. You don't need to have all the answers, but you need to show confidence in the subject. So let's move on to our structure. So we've talked about who we are speaking to, investors. What are they listening for? Stories. So how do we tell a story? A fantastic quote by Brené Brown, a very successful TED speaker. She describes stories as data with a soul.